When my daughter was 2 years old, I found her twirling paper towel tubes tied with twine in the air. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was practicing her nunchucks exercises. I was very confused because there was no way she could know what they were. I asked her what she meant, and she told me that Adam had taught her how to make them and showed her how to use them every night. She said Adam told her to practice because she might need to know how to defend herself someday. I was almost freaking out, but I asked her what Adam looked like. She said he was tall, blonde, and had blue eyes. "Mum, you know how he looks. You know him," she said. "He died of a headache." I had to leave the room. You see, my tall, blonde, blue-eyed martial arts expert friend had died of a brain aneurysm at the age of 27. She had not spoken of him since that day, so I'm not sure if I scared her with my reaction or if she had completed her lessons. The next day, I decided to observe my daughter's behavior. Perhaps this mystical martial arts training was not something that actually happened, and I had just influenced my child's imagination excessively. However, that evening, my daughter quietly sat and arranged her toys. I couldn't bring myself to ask her about Adam. Maybe I should handle this topic more carefully. One day, during breakfast, I gently brought up the subject. "Last night you were doing such a nice nunchucks exercise. Can you show me what you learned?" I said, smiling. My daughter paused for a moment, then nodded with a small smile. "Yes, but I was just doing it for fun. What Adam taught me was really useful." I looked at her in astonishment. "Really? What kind of things did he teach you?" "He taught me self-defense," she said seriously. "Adam knew what was behind my headache, and he told me that when I grow up, I might need to protect myself. So I learned real defense moves, not just nunchucks." This explanation eased me a bit, but there were still many questions in my mind. I needed to be sure about Adam's death and how my daughter became aware of this mysterious training. That day, I decided to sit down with my daughter and talk about the past. We sat down, and in a calm atmosphere, we started talking. I asked her how she knew Adam and where she learned those defense techniques. While playing with toys on the table, she thought for a moment and then began to speak slowly. "Mom, before I talk to you, I used to meet Adam frequently. I don't remember the things he taught me, but I know we spent time together. One day, he said there was a strange feeling in my head. And then, one day, he had to go, and he couldn't be here for me." This explanation brought a sense of confusion and sadness within me. My daughter spoke as if she had formed a connection in the past. I tried to explain to her about Adam's death due to a headache and how these matters could be complicated. Her eyes sparkled, and she continued, "But Mom, you said back then that I couldn't see him. You were trying to deceive me. Even though he wasn't physically present, he continued to help me somehow. It was during those times that he taught me nunchucks." I looked at her in amazement. The fog over these events was lifting a bit, but many questions still remained. I asked her, "Why did Adam teach you self-defense?" She thought for a moment and then said, "Maybe he knew that one day a little girl like me might need to defend herself. Maybe he knew something was behind the headache, and he wanted to protect me. We can never know." At that moment, this unusual conversation with my daughter both touched and made me contemplate. Perhaps, sometimes, connections beyond death can truly exist in a more complex way. Despite not finding a definitive answer to unravel the truth behind this mysterious event, my daughter and I had somehow found peace together. A few days later, strange events began to occur in our home. We heard odd noises at night, footsteps wandering in the corridors as if searching for something. My daughter's toys started moving on their own, guided by an unseen hand. Everything became even stranger than the mysterious day. One night, as I tossed and turned in bed, I noticed a silhouette in the dark. The black shadow stood in the corner of the room, staring at me. My daughter was sleeping next to me, but it seemed like the shadow was looking for something in her direction. Anxiously, I got up and decided to follow the shadow. I silently moved through the corridor, and the shadow suddenly disappeared. As I roamed the house, I felt a sudden cold breeze. Doors were closing, opening, and objects were shifting places. It felt like we were under the influence of some supernatural forces. When I returned to my daughter's room, the door was closed. As I entered, there was a strange atmosphere inside. For a moment, I saw something moving in the dark room, then everything returned to normal. My daughter was peacefully asleep in her bed, but a dreadful tension lingered within me. These events brought back the idea that Adam's ghost might be visiting our home. Perhaps my daughter's defense training had somehow established a supernatural connection. The mysterious energy entering our home suggested a kind of mission. One night, while my daughter was asleep, a shadow appeared in her room. This time, the shadow approached me. It whispered, "Protection." Then, it vanished. From that moment on, the strange occurrences in our home ceased, and Adam's ghost was not seen again. However, my daughter's defense training continued, and she was mastering it in an extraordinary way. One day, she turned to me and smiled. "Adam told me I need to fulfill my mission. He protected me, and now it's my turn." This explanation created a whirlwind of emotions within me. Even though the supernatural experiences in our home seemed to have ended, my daughter's eyes sparkled with determination and wisdom. It appeared that Adam's ghost had indeed given her some kind of mission. The supernatural connection in our home seemed destined to play an unusual role in my daughter's life. After a while, my daughter's behavior became even stranger. At night, we heard peculiar songs and incantations from her room. Our home was enveloped in an atmosphere of mystery. It seemed like my daughter's eyes were being guided by some alien entity. One day, I discovered a painting in my daughter's room filled with strange symbolism. Various symbols, indecipherable writings, and a dark aura adorned the painting, sending shivers down my spine. When I asked my daughter, "What is this?" she only responded with a mysterious smile. From that day on, the atmosphere in our home deteriorated even further. Strange sounds intensified from my daughter's room, and objects started moving on their own. Our home seemed intoxicated with a kind of negative energy, and I felt that something had spiraled out of control. One night, I woke up to find a shadow wandering in the dark corridor. Its eyes glowed red, and there was a sense of disturbance in the air. The shadow approached my room, and with a cold voice it said, "I have completed my task. Now, it's time for you to serve." Trembling with fear, I tried to resist, but the atmosphere around us became increasingly intense. My daughter's eyes had turned completely red, and she behaved as if she was controlled by some supernatural entity. The shadowy figure declared, "Now you will be with us in this house." Then they vanished into a dark mist, and a silence fell over the house. However, my daughter never appeared again. Her body seemed to have disappeared without a trace. As days passed, my home became emptier, as if something had drained all life energy from it. I was left alone, and my daughter's presence had completely vanished. Every night, strange sounds and shadows continued to disturb me. Behind these dark and mysterious events, the truth emerged that my daughter had been taken over by a supernatural entity, and an evil force ruled our home. My life, once a peaceful family haven, now drifted towards a dark and sinister end.